Alrighty, good morning. Apologies. Still going through the few, uh, what would you call them, teething pains when it comes to our new platform. But we're working on that. Let me just reduce the volume on this. We got some feedback. Alrighty, so this morning we're looking at the topic of bootstrapping. Specifically, we are on the subject of scaling. And I believe this is going on multiple platforms. So special welcome, of course, to the usual Facebook audience, but we also happen to have the LinkedIn audience. So in case you have a few people on LinkedIn, so special morning to you, and also those that are watching live from, what's the other platform? YouTube as well. So you're all welcome and glad to have you on board today. And now, without further ado, I'm going to jump straight into the presentation. And as you know, this particular presentation today looks at the subject of bootstrapping. And this particular subject of bootstrapping is very, very interesting for many people who have not really gotten to appreciate or understand the depth of what this is. We've looked at it over the last 3 weeks. And today I'm going into another aspect. So the last the 4 topics we looked at was, in other words, what's bootstrapping. There are 4 keys to this. The first one is starting, second is validating, third is optimizing, and that's what we looked at last week. And so today we're going to be looking at scaling the business. So that's the 4th one. And I can tell you with certainty, as I speak from experience, that this is the hardest part of the 4. Okay? In fact, all businesses will always grow to their level of inefficiency where they then stall. And the reason for this is simple. When any new startup commences, it has its owners as the business itself, okay? And they are everything in the business, right? This then means that they are in marketing, they're in logistics, they're in operations, they're in finance, and even office care itself. And they also handle the inventory and even create it at times. And if in the service industry, like some of us, they are the very service as well, okay? And this may be great to save costs and ensure delivery, but as a number of customers increases, this becomes a serious bottleneck to growth, okay? Scaling has 2 keys at its core, and these are capacity and capability. Okay, with capacity, it is the ability to manage and satisfy all new business as it increases in number. That means you have the capacity to satisfy it. Okay, and then the second one is, this often means new customers come in and you have to handle those. Now, capability relates to the ability to effectively manage large numbers of orders and efficiently satisfy them as well. This, my friends, is a nightmare for many in business because the number increases, but they have no capacity. And unfortunately, what was such an effort in bringing all these people to start with ends up becoming the thing that gets you to lose out. So for many businesses, this becomes an issue. So yes, you can effectively serve maybe 10 or 15, but when that number goes to 100, therein start your problems, because now you have no ability as a business to run efficiently, to run effectively, and at the end of the day, you lose them in droves. And that's extremely unfortunate considering how much it costs to actually bring a customer on board. So if you lose them because you've got no ability to handle the numbers, then it's a real loss. So unfortunately, that's the story with a lot of our new businesses. They just have no ability at all to run this and to do it well. So anyway, continuing, let's build that further. And by the way, I need to mute this. Just give me a moment. I need to mute myself because I'm getting an echo. So now, remember that I mentioned before that being effective means doing the right things, whilst being efficient means doing things right. And the first refers to getting results, whilst the second means using the least amount of resources to do so without wastage, okay? And this is much harder than it sounds, as many businesses become very inefficient as they grow, okay? Not only that, the capacity is greatly strained, and thus seems sees many fail to grow and become large multinationals. So there are 5 basic things that we're going to be looking at, okay? 5 basic things that need to happen in order to see any business scale fully. Okay, when scaling takes place, the business can grow to any level imagined, provided the founders remember that the business environment is very dynamic and changes all the time. And thus, the ability to remain relevant to business trends becomes vital for survival. Okay, and the 5 keys to mastering trends are. So let's go deeper into that. 1, anticipate. 2, prepare for change. 3, adapt. 4, accumulate. And lastly, 5, retain all the growth acquired. Now, this is something that I cover deeply in my previous posts and previous lessons, but we may cover it probably as we go. So the 5 factors to scale your business, which I'm now going to go deeper into. Number 1, assess and strategize. Number 2, seek financing. Number 3, secure your sales. Number 4, invest in technology. That's a big one. And number 5, hire the right staff or strategically outsource. So let's see if we can delve into each one of those and kind of get some steam going there. So let's begin with seeking financing. So one of the greatest challenges MSMEs face in Zambia today has got to be this factor of financing. Okay, firstly, it is the fact that government has seriously crowded out the private sector when it comes to borrowing from banks, simply because it makes more sense at present. Maybe it'll change, but as we speak right now, it makes more sense at present for any financier to lend their money to the bank, to the government through what are they called, treasury bills and government bonds, than to lend to the SMEs. Because with SMEs, the risks is higher. You may not get your money back. And that's why borrowing is generally very, very difficult in this country. Why? Because for most people, they just don't see the point in investing in that kind of situation, only to have their money lost. So many will happily choose not to put their money in private sector and would rather push it in government. But having said that, the further issue that's also a big deal is the failure rate, which is fairly unsustainable at present. And when you add to this the large domestic debt, I know government has been working very hard to dismantle that, but it's still a big issue. That means for the majority, there's just no way that you can get financing well. So with this as a factor, very little financing is available for most SMEs. Now I know that CEEC has got some money, they're giving grants, but I'll be very honest with you, we're looking at really paltry amounts of money. I mean, last I checked, I don't know how much they're giving right now, but it's not really much to write home about. It's not amounts that are going to make a very big difference for many classic businesses. So it can be extremely challenging, and because of that, for most people, borrowing from CEC is quite a challenge, I must admit. So many are not going to go that direction, and that in itself means that for the majority, they're pretty much stuck. They're just not going to go that way. And so it means you have to rely on other means to borrow. So what are those other means? Let's take a look at those. Okay. Now, there's also, by the way, before I even go into that, there's also this factor of undercapitalization. So if funding could be secured, most times it's not enough. Okay, it's smaller than what's really needed, and with such situations, it becomes even more challenging to remain sustainable or even become profitable. And if typical businesses take 1 to 3 years to become sustainable, one can immediately see the danger and challenge such an investment or scenario would pose. And add to this the fact that one has borrowed commercial loans as opposed to investment equity financing, then you find that businesses don't have enough time to allow the capital injection to work and bear more. And but immediately must start to pay that back, and that in itself means they are robbing themselves of the much needed capital to recapitalize. So this in itself then leads to a situation where most companies just haven't got what it takes to grow and succeed. And so having said that, or maybe let me just emphasize that a bit more. What am I saying in very simple terms? I'm saying that for many businesses, this inability to borrow money, which can then be tied into the venture for a foreseeable amount of time, usually 1 year, 2 years, and again, of course, VC comes in handy. I'll come into that. But this inability to borrow money and keep that money for a long time and allow it to grow, that inability in itself becomes a very big impediment to growth for most businesses. So most businesses need money that's going to stay for a while, and as that money stays for a while, it grows. There's recapitalization, and you only see that money starting to be paid maybe after a year or a year and a half. But again, if you're talking about commercial loans, that means you're still building that interest, and that interest can really kill you. It really can. Some places will allow you to pay the interest and keep the principal. So just pay the interest that's building up, and then the principal is kind of kept static for 1 year. But again, it's the same challenge. If your interest is 42%, which then you divide by 12 months, and you're looking at, okay, let's go 50. That's easier to multiply. So 50 divided by 12 will give you somewhere around 4% per month. 4% per month is fairly sustainable, but the reality is that 4% per month, when you look at a startup, a new business, and you're really trying to get your cash flows going and all these other things, that can be a real nightmare. So for many businesses, that becomes virtually impossible to grow. That's one of the reasons why so many businesses are struggling, and we're all in that boat, myself inclusive, because the capital with which we're working with is so limited. And if you borrow from the onset, that's even worse. And one of the things I always say, that's why you notice in scaling, there's starting, validating, and optimizing, because those first three phases are to allow the business to prove itself. You see, only when you get to the optimized state can you really be at a place where you can borrow. I always say that, and that's a really serious issue for a lot of businesses. They make this mistake. They don't allow the business to optimize first. And so because it's not optimized, they lose out. How do they lose out? Because the business has no capacity to grow. All the capital, all the profit that they earn is literally paid back to the banks or to whoever they borrowed from. So, and that's why I'm one of those people that keenly states all the time that do not, under any circumstances, borrow to start. Do not borrow to start. Make sure that your business is not in that space. Just build your business locally using gained capital directly. Let's look at those types of capitals you could use. How can you make this happen? What are the options for financing, considering how super challenging the situation is? So number one is self-finance. I think that's the most logical one, okay? This is a surefire way to get things going. It's best because it has the least amount of challenges and pressure. And where you do not have the money, start with your savings. So that's the only time you hear me support the idea of saving. I'm saying if you're going to save to start a business. Save for a capital project. Save for something that you're going to build, which will multiply what you have. So instead of asking for how much you need to start, again, I'm saying this, twist the question a little and ask how much is the least amount of money you need to start. Then raise that money and get running. Okay, once you do, plow back all your income into what you're doing and subsidize your business through other income like a salary. So this is the time when having a salary really makes sense, especially when you're starting. I'm not a big fan of working out there, but the truth of the matter is that multiple streams of income are such a big deal. And especially with a new business, for example, if you're a married couple, that helps a lot because one of you can really push the business whilst the other guarantees those monthly incomes to pay the basics, right? Your rentals, your food, and whatever. And then this business can run. So self-finance is big a deal. Now, for example, right now people have been doing these NAPSA withdrawals. I don't know how many are using that to do business. Most I know just go and just spend on consumption, which is unfortunate. But the most ideal scenario should be where you take that money and then you invest it in your business. So it becomes the capital. So self-finance is number one. Then number two, determine your needs. Don't just borrow. Don't just borrow. Don't just say, how much can I borrow? No. Be clear whether it's money for operations or money for stock, okay? Also, is it short term? That's up to 6 months. Is it medium term? That's up to 2 years. Or is it longer? Be very clear about what priorities these finances will address. And if you apply the funding wrongly, you end up with debt you cannot pay. And trust me, I'm speaking from experience. Okay, and that's why it's so important to be very, very clear even before you borrow 1 cent. Make sure you know exactly what it's going for. And by the way, let me just dwell a bit on this a bit more. It's also important to realize that even as you borrow for stock, you also need to borrow for, well, you need to have some kind of operational funding. You have to have money that's going to sustain your operations. Remember, if you've got people there, that means you've got salaries, you got transport, you've got your rentals if you're renting, well, you're renting. So you got rentals, and then you've also got your logistics, which is your transport, your phones, your internet, all these bits that you can't avoid, okay? Including bank fees. People don't think about those, but you realize that when you run a bank account, there is some monthly fees that are charged. All that is expenses. And you need to be very clear about this. Tax is also an expense, because if you're going to run a professional setup, you need to pay your tax obligation. So that's also an expense. So all these things need to be clearly understood. These which have to do with operations are what we call sunk costs. They just go and never come back. And then stock you could replace. But if you're a service provider like me, SPM, Dr. Nelly on this call, you don't really have stock per se. Okay, Dr. Auntie Sylvia, yes, she does have. She runs the printing company. She runs the clothes. They have stock. But there's a lot of, like, for example, PLD and ourselves, we don't, Destiny Peak, we don't have stock. We are the stock. We are the business. So in such instances, it's your operations that's your capital. So you got to make sure that even as you borrow, you do not overlook this. Now, I've always talked about the 1, 3, 5, 7. Now, the 1 and 3, I'll focus on 1 and 3. 1 is to break even, and 3 is to become sustainable. In the process of bootstrapping, usually the first stage, which is starting, the second stage, which is validating, and the third, which is optimizing. Many times the optimization stage is when you reach sustainability. The validity stage is when you become break even. So break even, so you only validate your business after a year. That means before that 1 year, you're not even breaking even. You're literally sinking money. That's why if you borrow, I'm stressing this again, if you borrow, make sure you've done your homework when it comes to the sustainability of your business. What's the story with the operations? So, for example, if you have stock, a lot of people say, okay, I'm going to borrow chickens, so you can go and do an outgrowers deal, and then you get some chickens, you borrow money, you get chickens, but you forget there's operations. There's buying the feed for the chickens. There's the workers plus yourself for running all that. There's the malasha, or is it the heaters or the lights or whatever it is. You know, there's a whole setup behind that, which is operational, which is not direct, but indirect. And then you got the marketing as well. And then you got the period of time between the time you make your sale and the time you transact the finances. All this is extra. A lot of people overlook this, and that's why they end up in problems. So determine your needs, very, very important. Number 3, have a solid business plan in place. I cannot overemphasize just how important this document is, okay? The sad part with many entrepreneurs is that they tend to go seek financing and then create a business plan after being asked for one. This couldn't be worse. You have got to have a solid plan for your business, okay? So it must also have a powerful corporate governance and management structure in place, and must include a solid appendix that gives supporting evidence for all assumptions shown. And one more thing, your financials must also be in top shape. And this means your systems, your processes, and corresponding records and reports. And this alone is a serious challenge for many startups, and another reason they fail to access financing. And I don't know how much I can emphasize this, but I can tell you from experience that many businesses fail on just this account. Okay, so it's very important that you have a business plan long before you ask one to be done for you. So these days, thank God for the internet, for the knowledge that's available. A simple research session online, on Google, wherever, can give you the basics of what a good business plan should have. So you can type and say business plan templates, and it will give you all these templates. You can study them thoroughly. Because remember, you're not doing a bankable business plan. Because a bankable business plan, yeah, that you have to go to an expert. You have to go to a consultant and pay them to do that for you. But I've always said, before you even do that, you should have a basic plan. I mean, what are you doing? What's your business? What are the principles in that business? What are your assets? What are your liabilities? Who are your customers and what have you, yada, yada, yada. The idea is you got to know what you're doing. You can just go out there and kind of do chipante-pante, wherever we go is wherever we go, chikulukwacha kind of arrangements. No. That's why many end up failing spectacularly, because they are all over the place. So that's not what you want. What you want is a scenario where you've got this whole baby cased out and understood. And that is very, very critical, because if you do that, then it means from the get-go, your business is definitely on solid footing. In other words, your business plan is the foundation. So forget about the bankable business plan asked for by a financer. No, by the time they ask you, you should have already a basic that you can hand over to the expert, and then they can work from there. A lot of people, the mistake they make is they now scamper around looking for somebody to write a business plan, but they don't even have the basics. Like, what's your mission? What's your vision? What's your goal? Who are your customers? What's your product? What's your strategy for sales? You know, all these things, your accounting, your whatever, blah, blah, blah. What's the story behind your business? So you'll find most people need zero. There's nothing in that space. So they get so messed up, and they now scamper like headless chickens looking for somebody. Do you write business plans? Do you write business plans? Do you write business proposals? That doesn't work. So make sure you have it long before they ask for it. I hope I've really hit home with that point. You know, the 5 P's of performance. Proper planning prevents poor performance. The key is have a plan in place. Plan, by the way, is an acronym for purpose-loaded action narrative. That's a plan. So have a plan in place. This is the thing. This is the blueprint. This is the GP, as they call it in the local colloquial. That's the GP. That's the game plan. What's your strategy? How are you proceeding from here? What are you going to? So have something. Don't just go kind of, no, don't. Number 4, find financiers. I'm going to end with this one. Unlike the general perception, there is funding available if you look hard enough. Now, that's amazing, but true. Okay, the sad part is that most people just aren't ready for it. In short, they don't prepare adequately. Like, for example, by having a proper plan with proper records. Okay, and this is the reason why this topic is even being done today. It is to show that there is indeed financing available, provided those who seek it do their homework in advance. I'm going to say this again. Funding is available. Let no one cheat you. There is money out there for your business. There is money. There are equity partners just looking to invest their money. And in our team here, we always talk about the abundance of the universe. There's so much abundance in this universe. There's enough for everyone. The key lies in, are you ready? Are you prepped? Okay? So do your homework. When you do your homework, it minimizes the chances of rejection, number 1. And as the saying goes, the 5 P's of performance. Proper planning presents poor performance. Okay, here in Zambia, we have adequate or quite a number of sources for financing. Each one comes with its pros and its cons, but overall, you need Your needs and type of business should be a key factor in determining what kind of financing you go for. And also do beware that if you acquire financing for wrong reasons, even if it's for your own business, have not seriously counted the cost, you risk failing to pay back. This I cannot overemphasize. So many businesses have failed on that account. And that's why you see me stress over and over and over the fact that it's so important you put your plan together. Have these finances in place. Now, I'm loving the comments on social media. I'm seeing them coming through from the various platforms. And thank you for those comments. We're still kind of getting a hang of this system, so I won't be able to highlight the comments for today. But one thing I should say is that those of you that are following what we're teaching today, it's very important to remember that this is one of the first aspects of scaling. So seek finance. In other words, get that whole process understood right from the get-go, so that even as you scale, one thing that I'll quote Vusi. I can't quote him word for word, but he said something so profound it hit me square on the forehead. He said, the true mark of scaling is the ability to use the same resources but multiply your output. That's when you've scaled. I'll say that again. If you open a second, third, and fourth outlet, and your cost of operations increase beyond the original cost in order to accommodate those and then bring an income, then you've not scaled. That's serious. Yes, you've not scaled. In the true meaning of scaling, it is this ability to increase outlets, to increase income, to multiply yourself, to duplicate yourself, and not increase your core output. One of the most powerful ways of scaling today that we can think of is franchising. So in a true franchising setup, the cost of the new outlet belongs to the person coming in. The core company provides a system and the training and the support and the product, but they don't increase their output. They don't increase their cost, their core cost. It remains the same. So a lot of people, what they do is they open a second outlet, they open a third outlet, and then you discover that this original business is the one financing all those others. So those others aren't even making money. Most of them are literally taking money out of this one to pay those. That's not scaling, that's spreading thin, and a lot of businesses end up failing spectacularly. I'm sure you've come across a number of restaurants, you've come across a number of shops where when they did that, they actually got their business to fail. So the model lies in how do you get a system so well that you can duplicate it without increasing your cost of output. That's a homework for all of us, okay? Yes, same input resources, Luvinda Kamacha says, same input resources, but multiplying your revenues. That's true scale. So in my next presentation next week, we're going to go even deeper, and we're going to look at the second subject which I had highlighted. So remember, in closing, what did I say? I say that there is seeking financing, because we did assess and strategize. So there's seeking financing, and then we're going to go into securing your sales. So in the next transmission, we'll look at securing your sales. So just before I close, let me see if this baby can behave. Can it behave? It doesn't look like it's behaving at all. So I'm not even going to try. So on this note, I want to thank you all for being a part of our call. Remember, this is live on Facebook. This is live on LinkedIn, and it's also live on YouTube. So please remember to share this video, add your comments. I will come through after this call to go through all the comments and also give my input and share with you. Thank you so much for joining us. Tomorrow, remember, it's and Sylvia, and she's looking at another topic in her great platform, Mindset Change. Wednesday, we will have what we have on Wednesday, then Thursday, Dr. Nelly with Prosperity for Your Soul, and then Friday, we have Dr. Jackie. So for myself, thank you so much and have a great morning. We look forward to see you again. All right, so you know how it is when you click and it takes 30 minutes to show.